Hey guys, I'm ZSH Plays and welcome back to the Wetlands, Florida. Today we're going to be building a habitat for the brand new Crested Newt and the American Bullfrog. But first, oh yeah, that looks good. I want to say a massive thank you to Tony Bridges in the comments on last week's episode. He lives in Florida and he gave me loads of great advice on making the Everglades look more like the Everglades. But here we are where we're going to be building today, just behind the Red Crown Crane Aviary. And what could be more boring than 4 exhibit boxes all in a row? Well, that is today's challenge. How do we make this look good? So I've got loads of different ideas on which way to go with this. And what I've ended up with is an absolute monstrosity of fake rocks. If you watch my channel, you know I am not a big fan of the fake rocks. I don't mean in a game sense, they're very realistic in terms of what you see in zoos. I mean as in, I don't like using them because I like my zoos to look super high end and like they'd actually go to a quarry and get real rocks that fitted what they needed rather than making terrible fake rocks. But in this Florida zoo, we're taking things pretty fast and loose, as you've probably noticed. And I want to get a load of different styles into this zoo and really try and get that Wetlands, Florida feel going. So today I decided to go all out with fake rocks and see what we could achieve with them. And I am really happy with the final result, despite it being pretty much the opposite of my usual style. So the first thing I wanted to do with the exhibits is split them into 2 areas and make it look like, rather than 4 4-meter boxes next to each other, there are 2 large exhibits, one for the American Bullfrog and one for the Crested Newts, and I'm going to have them on different heights. So I discovered you could actually raise them away from the paths, and even if the path doesn't connect to it, the guests will still stop and look at it. So you can see here I'm going to raise the 2 central exhibits higher than the others, and then we're going to cover everything up with a mixture of concrete and fake rocks so that hopefully it looks like one giant habitat split into 2 areas, one for each animal. So I'm using the concrete here just to make sure that none of the actual exhibits are still showing, raising the second one, and now we're going to start with the fake rocks. So these are going to cover the entire structure. The entire thing is essentially going to be built out of these fake rocks. In real life, I think these are made out of either fiberglass or poured concrete, depending on sort of what technique the zoo wants to use. And the one thing I do like about these fake rocks, I think I mentioned it before, is that you can use a secondary colour to add a bit of sort of moss to them, which makes them look a bit more realistic. But I am going for that kind of cheesy zoo feel here, rather than trying to make it look like they are real rocks. We want to make this look like a proper zoo exhibit. So we're going to use the rocks to cover up all the concrete and just sort of split everything into the 2 different areas that I want, so that we have the bullfrogs on the left and the newts on the right. So none of the plaster will be visible by the end of this. It's just a matter of finding the right shaped rocks and putting them over everything so that you end up with something that looks completely like it is made out of these fake rocks rather than anything else, concentrating on making sure the guests can see into it. And the reason I've done 2 different heights is firstly because it looks more interesting, and secondly I always feel with the aquatic exhibits in this game that they are done in such a way that the guests are always looking sort of down on the water, and if you wanted to actually see into the water you'd have to crouch down, which if the animals are mainly underwater is not the best viewing experience, because you can't really see animals when you look into water from the top. You need to be looking into it directly from the side like you're in an aquarium, and the aquatic exhibits in this game don't really do that. So I did 2 of each like this, so that in one the guest's eyesight is above the water level so that they can see the frogs or the newts when they're on their little islands in the middle, and then in the central exhibits the actual eye line of the guests is below the water line so they can see them underwater properly. I've put the maximum amount into each of these, so I think we've got like 12 bullfrogs and 8 newts, might be the other way around. And just to trying to make sure that there's always good viewing, there's always at least one animal on display, which is always a challenge with Planet Zoo's exhibits. And then we're going to carry on with some more rocks and start covering up these central columns, and I'm going to use the faux tree branches either side and on the central columns to add a bit more texture and a bit more interest to it, so it doesn't look too square. I want this to have a really organic feel, albeit organic in a very fake kind of way, if Thank you all for your comments on this series so far, by the way. I'm really enjoying reading them. It was a big decision in terms of my YouTube channel anyway, to put Tecton on hold for a month to start building this zoo. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying it. I really hope you like the new episode of Tecton that I put out a few days ago. From now on, we're going to be able to switch between these two zoos depending on what I fancy building. It's always good to have the freedom to sort of go with what you're inspired to do that day rather than only having one zoo to work on. And I am really enjoying having both of these zoos, especially with the sort of different styles that we can do in the wetlands. It's been a lot of fun doing stuff like this rather than the very architectural stuff that I do in Tecton. And these tree trunk pieces are so useful. I really should use them more. Once you start putting more than one of them in and rotating them and combining them together, you can get some really, really good results. They look really organic. So anyway, we are building the roof here. Again, this is going to be built out of concrete just so I've got a shape to work with, and then at the end all of the concrete will either be deleted or covered up with rocks so that you can't see any of it. It's just to make sure that I know what I'm doing in terms of the space that we have. You can see the little area at the back which is for the staff access, so there's no staff going into the front of the exhibits to clean them and getting in the way of the guests. That'll all be done in the inside of the building at the back, and then going to build up a big old pile of rocks here to serve as the roof. That font, by the way, is by the incomparable Ricey, and I've checked that actually is by Ricey, not by Christina, like on the entrance build, and I think that fits in perfectly with the style that we're going for in this exhibit. And yeah, the facade's looking pretty good, but we still need to work on the sides and the back, and then add the finishing touches to the front that's really going to bring it to life and make it look absolutely perfect. So what I'm doing here is covering up the last remaining bits of concrete on the inside with the faux tree trunk and the faux tree branches to try and get a really organic kind of feel on the inside. So we'll just copy this branch around so that the circular window is covered up. And then we still get that nice shape of the window, but without the concrete kind of look. And then I wanted to use the rustic stone pieces as a backdrop. I see that a lot in zoos, almost like a dry stone wall, a bit like in the Machu Picchu build in Tecton Zoo. We're going to use that as the backdrop for the exhibits. I think it adds a really interesting look to the background of it with the texture of the rocks themselves, and of course it's only one piece, which saves time, which is always nice. And then we'll do some work on the sides and the back of the habitat to bring that up to scratch. So the intention is that you're not really going to be able to see these sides of it when you're in the zoo, but you can see this end that you're looking at now when you're in the Capybara country walkthrough. And I'm sure you'll be able to catch glimpses of it, you know, wherever you are in the zoo, so it's important that it doesn't look terrible. So we'll put a bit of detailing in it, you know, some gutters, a few air conditioning units, power supplies, a few leaves up on the roof and things like that, and just make sure that it still looks decent wherever you see it from. But obviously the front of it, as in a real zoo, is the bit that you're going to concentrate on. That is the bit that the guests are going to be up close to. So that's the bit that you want to make sure looks really good. I'm also going to put some of the aquatic murals on it. I love these pieces. They are so zoo-y. They are really the kind of thing that you would see in zoos, but I hardly ever get the chance to use them because they don't really fit the style that I like to build in. So definitely grabbing the chance to use those in this zoo. And then just going to put some of the new cable pieces to act as sort of supports for letters at the back so they don't just look like they are floating, and put some foliage on the roof to break up the greyness of the rocks and just sort of have a bit of a pop there with the green. And then the final stage of detailing, so I'm going to use some of the faux rock steps to build away from the exhibit glass up to the roof, and once I spin these round, this looks really nice. I think ties the two of them together really nicely. I put some grills in as like sort of ventilation for the habitats, but I thought it was a bit much in the end, so I got rid of those. And then I'm going to use some decals to add some interest to the front and cover up the fact that it's just the same piece being repeated. It looks so good when you add them. And that's the amphibians done. I really hope you like this. It's way out of my comfort zone, but I really enjoyed building this. Stick around for the cinematics. I really hope you enjoy them, and I will see you again very soon in the next episode. Thanks for watching, guys.